Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. With the voice, Milt Thompson. Delivering the best of sports programming. Interviews with top celebrities. And the answer to the question, where are they now? And now, Milt Thompson, Playing for Keeps.
Welcome to Playing for Keeps. Yes, I am your host, the voice, Milt Thompson. Every Friday night on WHMB Channel 40, we have the best in sports programming, and as you've known from our last couple of months of wrapping up with superstars, we bring them in here, we talk to them, not just about what they do on the field, on the court, or even rolling around the race car track. We talk to them what's really going on, what makes them tick, what allows them to be elite, what allows them to get to that level where other people are saying, how did they get there? And as you well know, we've had some Horatio Alger stories here. Folks that didn't really come from the best of means, and they find a way to fight it through, whether it's a chip on their shoulder or whether it's a chance opportunity that someone grants to them, but they take advantage of it. They run with it, and they get to riches. And sometimes they slip and fall, but they get themselves back up, and they fight back through it. And then sometimes we have people who come from means, and I'm really curious about that. And I asked that, Mark Patrick's son, you remember on the show? I said, well, God, you came from means. You had a basketball court and everything and basic pitching mounds in your backyard. What motivated you to go? He said, I had a target on my back too. People wonder just because they know who your father is and they know who your mother is, the lovely Pam Storin in my high school class. My goodness, we just had our 50-year reunion just not too long ago. And for them to say, we've got a guy here and we're going to make it easy for you, we're going to give you every opportunity you can, but if you don't take advantage of it, that's your problem. Well, we've got someone else like that here. In fact, he's impenetrable. He's the impenetrable Chris Denari, because you cannot get through that veneer, man. I tell you what, you try to get down into his soul, he'll have something quick for you. And he'll do that every time. He's a fantastic play-by-play man, as you guys know now, for our loved Indiana Pacers. And I think last week you saw Tamika Catchings on the Fever side. This week we've got the impenetrable one, Chris Denari. We'll be right back here on Playing for Keeps.
Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube.
Welcome back to Playing for Keeps, and yes, I am your host, the voice, Milt Thompson. Go out and patronize Jiffy Lube. Go out and patronize East Spot Spas. Go out and utilize the services of Blinky Dillon Crandall. And you know what? When you're there, tell them that the voice sent you. And when they send you, say, I just saw the impenetrable one on your show. My goodness. Chris Denari.
How you doing?
So good to see you, my man.
Good to see you, Milt.
Man, how do you stay so young?
I don't know. I've been lucky. Good genes.
Man.
Yeah.
Man.
Good genes and CrossFit. I do CrossFit 3 days a week.
Man,
so
I get hooked up in a CrossFit, man. I get crossed up on a CrossFit. But you're looking great. You've had a magical, impenetrable career. Let's go back to the beginnings and how that kind of got started, and when you were making college choices and still wanting to play basketball, your high school years, where you could bust a jumper every once in a while.
Yeah, I could. I really owe it all to my late dad. My dad was a high school teacher and coach. We grew up in Ohio. He's a native of Indianapolis. He went to Howe.
Right.
My mom was from the Dayton area, and they met at IU, and they got married and started their careers in southwestern Ohio. And from the age of 5, I sat on the bench, and I was around the team. I'd leave elementary school. I'd go to practice. And so I always knew that I wanted to be in sports. And then we moved to Indiana when I was an 8th grader. We moved to Westfield, just north of Carmel, when I was a junior. I had a chance to play for my dad for 2 years, which was awesome. And I knew that if I had a chance, I wanted to play in college. And so I was a non-scholarship player. I was a Division III player, and fortunately went to Wabash. And when
they can play in Division III, just by the way.
Oh,
just so
they
you know.
can play. Hey, Wabash had a great year this year. Jack Davidson from Hamilton Southeastern, who I'm sure has been on many a game here on Channel 40, had a fantastic career. And so I knew that I wanted to play, but when I got to campus for that orientation, my dad took me over. I was the oldest of 5, first one to leave the nest. and there was a table with the radio station WNDY. And my dad said, you know, I think you'd be pretty good at that. You ought to go talk to them. And that's how I got started. And so from day one at Wabash, which is not known as a broadcasting school, I had a radio show and I started to do play-by-play. Couldn't do basketball because I played, but I was the voice of the football team, and that all led to where I am today.
The impenetrable one got to start on a college campus.
Yes.
Still got to play some ball.
Yeah.
Just got to see that dream through.
Yeah.
And with some coaching, you got to figure out that you can use your voice and your handsome face to be impenetrable on air.
Yeah.
That led to a pretty exciting ascent in your career.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and I will say this, I say my dad was a key, my parents, both my parents, but also my wife. We've been married 38 years. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't with her support, because when you start out in broadcasting, everyone thinks you have these great jobs that pay a lot of money. That's not the case, at least it wasn't for me when I started out. But I was able to, you know, put myself in position, do it in my hometown. And, you know, I had a number of big breaks. 1989, I became the associate AD at Butler and the voice of Butler basketball. And so I did that for 17 years. And I was there as Butler became what it is now. You know, back in 1989, Butler was not what it is now in the Big East. And so I did that for 17 years, and now I'm getting ready to start my 17th year with the Indiana Pacers. So, you know, I've had a lot of breaks along the line, a lot of good people, you know, have been there for me. I think that's what all of us do in whatever position we're in. But I think especially in broadcasting, you sort of lean on people to help you get to where you hope to go, and I've been fortunate to do that.
Married for 38 years?
38 years.
You don't look 38 years old, my friend. I tell you what.
I'm a Gramps, too. I'm a Gramps.
Folks, you don't believe this here. That's why he's impenetrable, because you can't get through again. Chris, you started out working at a college, and mostly was kind of Division II-ish.
Yeah.
Except for basketball as it kind of emerged, and the scholarship rules were a little bit changing around that time, and you were working with some other good friends over there, Ralph Reef and some others.
Barry Collier was the coach. I got there in 1989. You know, Bill Sylvester was the AD. Jim McGrath was the sports information director. I had worked, and I think where I had met you, I had worked at the old MCC office, and so I was very involved in NCAA tournaments and the Sports Corporation and all that kind of stuff. And so this was at a time that Butler made the decision with Dr. Jeffrey Bannister as the president, hey, we're going to give it a go, and we're going to see what we can do with this basketball thing. It's worked out pretty well.
You think?
I think it's worked out pretty well.
I think it's worked out for the university, too.
But, you know, I was there when we were just building it. We were trying to get people to come to Hinkle Fieldhouse to watch Butler basketball. And so what's ironic is, you know, Thad Mott is now back as the coach. My first year as the voice of Butler was his senior year as a player. And then the first game that Butler won in the NCAA tournament in some 30-some years in 2001, Thad was the coach. So it's just interesting how all of those things
go full circle a little bit.
They circle around.
Yeah, yeah. So you were doing play-by-play and for Butler at the university level.
Yep.
And you guys got involved in sponsorships, and you kind of learned a little bit of everything when you're in broadcast at that level. Yeah. Everybody does everything, and as I always say, no matter what the organization is, everybody's selling.
Yeah, I mean that was the biggest thing for me is the radio portion of my job wasn't the most important thing. I was in charge of ticket sales, sponsorship, anything that you could generate income to help grow the product. And so, you know, that was really key for me. And then I sort of flipped. I stayed as the voice of Butler, but I went to work for the good doctors at Methodist Sports Medicine, now Forte Sports Medicine. And that really was a game changer for me because I learned what it was like to be on the other side, to be the partner. And they were great because at that point, that's when the Indiana Fever came, and you mentioned Tamika. I became the voice of the Indiana Fever, and I did that for 18 years. I did that from 2000 to 2017, was there for the title in 2012. I did the Colts post-game show. I did the high school state finals. In fact, I did the high school state finals a few years here on WHMB. So all these great things happened for me. And that led, you know, to me going back into TV full-time at Fox 59 and then getting the Pacers job in 06?
Well, those just don't happen to you. There has to be something where the impenetrable one kind of makes them happen. So if you were to start out for design, coaching kids into broadcasting, and everyone thinks that they can do it, but it's not the simplest thing to do. Well, he's just behind the microphone. He just stands over there and looks good and just kind of reads all the teleprompter and just goes for it, right? What do you tell them if they're trying to figure out their way to get into a job like that?
Well, what I would tell them is you have to put in the time and you have to do more than is expected. And for me, even at my age and 17 years in the NBA, I still treat game 1 of the regular season the same as I treat game 82. I treat a Tuesday night against X team the same way as a Friday night against LeBron and the Lakers. It's no different for me. Sure, there's more excitement in the building when, one of those NBA stars comes to town or your team's really good, but you have to put the work in. And so I would say to a young person is, your education is important. Howard Caldwell, the longtime anchor at Channel 6, I interned at Channel 6 with Howard and Tom Carnegie and all that, and he said, look, we can teach you television, but you need to learn how to write and speak. And so that was the key thing for me at Wabash as an English major and a speech minor, is I really honed in on, the basics, the fundamentals, right?
How do you communicate?
Yeah, exactly.
And
then they'll teach you how to look at the camera and all that kind of stuff.
But you're really, truly telling a story.
Right.
You get a little more help than Mark Boyle gets. Radio, he's got to really describe it.
Yeah, I've got a picture.
Right, you got a picture and you're describing what you see, yet at the same time you got to give it some texture.
Yeah.
And, my goodness, Quinn Buckner, oh my mercy.
32-0, that's what can you imagine, can you imagine that, well, here's the other thing I like to say about QB, is there are 4 men in basketball that have high school state championship, college national championship,
undefeated one,
Olympic gold medal, and NBA title.
champions.
Yeah, it is it 4 or 3? It's Jerry Lucas, it's Magic Johnson, it's Quinn Buckner. Well, there might be another one, but it's a small
little group.
And when you think on the women's side, Tamika's in there too.
We talked about that
because she's got all those.
And folks who watched last week, they got a chance to hear those. And we talked about only 4 medals, only 4 gold medals. Oh, it's just world championships.
And I just want to tell you, she is the absolute best. I can't even describe my years with her. Just. At that point, I was doing every game on radio. I was traveling with the team and all that. And to see what she accomplished.
Because she is the enterprise. But we're with the impenetrable one here today, Mr. Chris Denari. We're going to come right back and do a little more chatting with him and find out about these great experiences with the Indiana Pacers on television. We'll be right back here on Playing for Keeps.
Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube.
Hey, and welcome back to Playing for Keeps. And yes, I am your host, the voice, Milt Thompson, here on WHMB Channel 40. Every Friday night, we'll lead into a basketball show with Mr. Eisenbarger. And then after that, sometimes, it depends on the season, you'll run to Howard Kalman and he'll talk baseball. And then after that, you'll find the high school game of the week, either in football or in basketball, depending upon the season. But you get your full lineup of sports.
Everything.
They do only high school sports.
Yeah.
We do championship stuff here with the impenetrable one, and that's with Chris Denari.
Yeah.
Chris, people sometimes in their daydreams, they're saying, God, that would be my daydream job, to be next to Tamika Catchings, to talk with Larry Bird, to hang around with Jim Morris and Rick Fusen from the business world and the other side of the shop. And you've got to do that in the context of confidentiality and learning what your role is with them, vis-a-vis them. Tell us about the, what you might say, stargazing piece of that and how you've been able to make that become a natural part of your delivery.
Yeah, I think the thing that you learn, and I will say, sometimes when Larry was with the team, you'd get on an elevator with him and you go, I'm on an elevator with Larry Bird, even though I worked with him and all that. But it's just one of those things that I think the key about being the voice of a team is building and gaining trust with the people that you work with and then the players and the coaches. I mean, I'm dressed today. I just came from practice. The Pacers getting ready for another season. And it's important to be there, to watch practice, to understand what the guys or the gals are going through, to listen to what the coaches are telling them, and then after practice being there and talking to them and just gaining their trust. Because you have to understand that not only are you watching the game and all the fans that are watching the game, but their friends and loved ones are watching the game. And so there's a trust factor that I think as the voice of a team that you build. And so I've learned that over the years. When I got the job in 2006, Donnie Walsh was very involved with the franchise. Rick Fuson, of course. Jim Morris came along. And you have a great relationship with the front office. The Simons have been great owners and governors in the NBA. And so for me, it wasn't that hard from the standpoint. I've always been a team guy. I told you, when I was 5 years old, I was sitting on the bench with my dad's teams. I was riding the school buses to the game. So I've understood what you do as a team broadcaster. Now, we have to be honest at times, right? Mm-hmm. If your team's not playing well, you got to tell people. But I enjoy being invested with a group of people trying to strive, for a championship.
2 or 3 other guests we've had on here, they're in similar roles or relationships with the team, and every one of them say, you have to know the individual. You need to know the person. And that may come with some criticism sometime.
Yeah.
Because if you're just thought of as a homer all the time,
yes,
you're going to lose credibility with your other audience, right?
Absolutely.
So, go ahead.
And I have never, here's the great thing about working for Pacer Sports Entertainment. No one has ever sat me down and said, well, you have to say this. Sure, I think we all know as the home team broadcaster what that line is, but they trust you, they understand that you're a part of the group, and sometimes you have to say, hey, the team's playing bad. They are. Because as you said, the fan will not buy what you're saying if you're not honest and you're sugarcoating everything. So, so for this year's Pacers team, it's a very young team. The Pacers are doing something they probably haven't done in years, and it's a reset. But I see what they're trying to build, and with a lot of these young players, Tyrese Halliburton, Isaiah Jackson, Jalen Smith. I mean, these are new players that the Indianapolis community, I think, is going to very much embrace, and you've got to let them grow and marinate a little bit. And I think in a few years, this can be a really strong franchise and one of those that can compete at the level that they want to compete at in the next few years.
Well, one of the important elements, I think, would be getting to know these folks is traveling with them.
Yeah.
You're on that flight, you're in different cities, you're different locations, different relationships, other broadcast teams from the other team that you're gracious host to when they come. Then all of a sudden we got a pandemic.
Yeah.
We got, in the middle of an NBA game, everyone, I believe it was a Pacer game, was it?
Well, the Tuesday night, our last game was in March of 2020, and the next day the season went on hold, and so I have not traveled since March of 2020. We will be back on the road this year. I've done probably almost 100 road games in the studio at Gainbridge Fieldhouse over the last 2+ years. So you're right. You learn a lot about these players when you're just around them. You can ask about their kids, about their families. You come down from your hotel room to go grab a meal. There's a couple of guys sitting, in the lobby, and you just sit down with them for 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, I'm 61 years old. These guys are 20. I mean, I could be their grandpa.
You really
I could be their grandpa.
You really should.
And so, but that's when you learn things about them that you might use. I mean, some of these guys want you to tell their story. And we said it back early in this interview. We are storytellers.
Right.
And yes, we use numbers and stats and all those kinds of things. But I think people want to hear these players' stories, and that's what our job is to do.
I'm going to name a couple times.
Okay.
And I want you to tell me your impressions of them looking back at them.
Okay.
Okay. The Great Brawl.
I was glad I was not courtside for that. I was the sports director at Fox 59. I had just done a Butler game at Hinkle, and I have never seen an eating establishment go stone cold quiet. And I knew that that weekend, whatever I had planned, erase it, because we were going to deal with that.
Return of Michael Jordan.
When he wore 45?
When he wore 45.
That was an amazing, and he wore 45 and he had his shorts on backwards. What was it? He just said, "I'm back." And
Tiger got me a photo of that when I got one. That one's picture.
And he was back.
He's back.
Phenomenal.
He's back.
Yeah.
Larry Bird.
Think about his story. One of the all-time greats. I think he won 3 NBA titles. What he accomplished at Indiana State. It's funny because I see Carl Nix.
Right.
He's one of our scouts.
Gotcha.
And every time I see Carl, I just think of, boy, they had a chance to win the championship.
And of course,
yeah.
Magic Johnson was on the way. And
then we had Magic and Larry for years and years after that.
Right. And so about the finals, 1992.
Pacer finals? Kobe and Shaq. I mean,
what else can you say, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was I think they won 3 straight. And that's what the Pacers aspire to do, get back there. If you think back in 2013-14, made it to the Eastern Conference Finals twice, and who was in the way? It used to be in the 90s, it was Michael, and then it was Kobe and Shaq, and then it was LeBron.
Right.
But that's what you strive for, and that's, as a broadcaster, that's what we want to be a part of.
There's been kind of the foreign invasion. We used to be, you take a couple American players, get them overseas, and I'd do that. Then all of a sudden, you've got different cultures.
Yeah.
And the NBA has exploded with that.
Yeah, international players.
International players, and a couple of them I had a little bit of work to do with, and let me name them, and you tell me what your impressions.
Okay.
Detlef Schrempf.
Boy, I was walking through the building, 6th man of the year a couple of times,
Yes.
NBA All-Star, could do it all, could shoot, could pass. I mean, he would, in today's game, flourish, wouldn't he?
He would.
I mean, because he has the skill set.
Because there's not a position.
No,
he can play all positions.
He is positionless, a positionless
Exactly.
player, and that's exactly what basketball is right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Stick with another foreigner on that team, Rick Smits.
Oh man, the Dutchman. I mean, could shoot the perimeter shot. I just remember the shot when Mark Boyle goes crazy in the playoffs and whatever. And we see Rick from time to time. His daughter works for the Pacers, Jasmine. So yeah, that's fantastic player.
Well, you've got great players, and tell me in our couple minutes we have left here, some of the greatest calls that you had as an announcer. Now, this is coming from your perspective.
Yeah, my perspective. I mean, I would say in 2003, a kid named Avery Sheets, who played at McCutcheon High School, hit a basket at the buzzer for Butler to win the regular season championship. That got them the at-large bid. They won 2 games and went to their first Sweet 16 in 40 years. That call was, one of my favorites. And I'll go to racing. I'm in turn 4 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And I think about some of the great calls when Sam Hornish Jr. Passed Marco Andretti. And I said in turn 4, can a teenager win in Indianapolis? I'm glad I didn't say he was going to win.
Right.
I just said can. And Sam Hornish won. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I've had a number of...
You've had some great ones.
I've been lucky.
We appreciate you.
Well, thank you
so much being on our show. I can't believe we're able to get people. Kelly, you are doing the bomb. You're helping us get people like Chris Denari on this show that takes us back. And my goodness, thanks again.
Thanks, Milt.
We'll be back here next Friday night on Playing for Keeps.